Welcome to the Real Red Welcome to the Real Red Reaction Show here on ESPN Lincoln, also on our social media platforms for ESPN Lincoln, Kicks 96.9, and KFOR. And it's your chance to sound off and react to the Nebraska-Michigan game just wrapping up moments ago. Michigan coming away with a 34-3 victory over Nebraska today, and a lot of weird things happening that we'll get to here in a moment. Jeff Moats, joined by Bill Hooks, Will Wilson, Meg Reeder, and Connor Clark. We'll try to maybe get some input from Chris Schmidt, who is on his way to go see the Dave Matthews Band perform tonight. And hopefully we can get his comments maybe at some point. But 34-3, the final, Michigan covering the spread. Heading into yesterday, at least, the spread was bumped up to 31. So the game, obviously they covered it, and the woes just continue for Nebraska. But, boy, you talk about being socked with a double whammy. Your starting quarterback today, Chuba Purdy, goes out with an injury, and then your offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, gets taken out on the sideline on a play. And so Nebraska has to bring in Logan Smothers to run the offense on the field, and then Mickey Joseph takes control of handling the offensive coordinator stuff during the ball game. So we'll talk more about that, but let's just get everybody involved here really quick. And looks like Chris Schmidt joining us here on the stream. And a reminder that we will pause here at the conclusion of the Alabama game we have over the air on ESPN Lincoln, and we'll have it over the air on the radio here in a little bit. But let's go around the table first. Let's get everybody's assessment of what you thought today. Was it something that you expected primarily? Let's start with Chris Schmidt and get your thoughts on what happened today.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. We're off to a concert shortly, which is great. But to be quite frank, we've been screaming about Logan all week, right?
Yeah.
And the offense flipped when Chuba went down with the foot injury. It was just anemic offensively. It was really tough to watch. Really no answer. Michigan defensively was very good. But Nebraska's defense hung in, kept them in there. So, you know what? It wasn't as ugly. It was a ugly, bad football game, but it wasn't as horrible as it could have been, I guess is the best way I'll put it. And, Trey Palmer's got to find himself. He's had a lot of bad football since his breakout game against Purdue. That's kind of my synopsis. It's going to look worse than it was, but Nebraska hung in there. Michigan didn't really wow today, and I think part of that is because of Nebraska.
I would agree with you, Chris. I was, especially when at the first half, we're looking a 7-0 ball game after the first quarter. I thought maybe at that point Michigan would rack up 3 touchdowns heading into the second quarter, and again a testament to the Nebraska defense. They were able to kind of limit Michigan from really getting going. Even though Corum's a great running back, very stout running back, very strong, but I was surprised on how Michigan just really could not get off out of the gates right away like they really wanted to. And again, Nebraska's defense, that's a credit to them. But again, as you mentioned, the offense completely changed when Purdy went down and Smothers finally came in there. Let's get Meg. Let's get your thoughts on what you thought of today's game.
I'm going to echo those sentiments. I think we knew what we were expecting coming into this game, facing number 3.
And she just froze up.
Hello?
Meg, are you there? Go ahead.
Oh, am I good? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Go ahead.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Oh,
Maybe not.
Knew what we were facing with the Michigan defense with a fan running. I will absolutely say that our defense hung, and that's defense can hang. But
now, Meg, you're having trouble with your internet right now. Go ahead. Meg, Meg, if you can, maybe try to get something situated there. We'll get
parents,
back.
this is my parents. I'm my parents. I'm them. How's that? Are we good?
Hey, you're still
I'm like you're in the
and out.
electric chair, Meg.
Well, we'll get back to Meg here in a moment. Bill Hooks.
Not her fault.
Bill Hooks, let's get your comments on what you saw today, what you thought.
I agree with what Schmitty said a little bit on that side. But my concern with this whole game plan was the fact that when Purdy went out, obviously we had no game plan for Smothers at this point. They went inept. I know Michigan's very good, but there was nothing for Smothers. They had no game plan at that point. So it's again, like this has been concerning for a few games now. So, Nebraska is like where they are.
Yeah, I get you.
Well, it comes down to the preparation part. We've been hearing all about, they've been doing some mental preparation. They're not getting enough snaps, that sort of thing. Obviously, we've been hearing this all week. They were kind of balancing each other out in terms of the number of reps they were getting with the first team offense. And then you throw in Logan Smothers, and it's like throwing like a deer in the headlights look almost. He wasn't completely prepared. I don't know if it was that or if the fact that it was just simply cold and rainy and snowy in Ann Arbor today. I think he's
dinged, Motzi. I think he's dinged a little bit. I think Logan's been dinged. I think he got hurt against Minnesota or re-injured himself, so he's not been 100% because there's been a clamoring, and I'm sorry to hog this here, but I think there's obviously been a clamoring for Logan, right? But you saw Purdy get better this week. I'll say that. I mean, he looked better. He still isn't 1,000% composed, but he's been better at scrambling. And Nebraska's just had too many drops around their backup quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Will Wilson, let's get your thoughts.
I thought changing. Now you kind of had to change Purdy because he got hurt, but I thought Logan should have came in well before that. And I look at the D line too. When you look at a team like Michigan, the gap between a college football playoff team and Nebraska, you saw it right there on the line of scrimmage. We could not get past, we couldn't get off the line. They were running 6 yards a pop every single time. That shows right there the gap between Nebraska and a college football playoff team. And other than that, Purdy, I guess he had a few good plays. Is it me or does his throwing motion just kind of look weird? I don't know. Maybe that's
it's totally weird. It's totally weird, and he just gets too anxious. I think he calmed down, and when he wasn't airmailing it, they were dropping it. Aside from Washington, so
you mentioned Trey Palmer, Schmitty, a moment ago on how he hasn't been the same. His focus has really not been there ever since he had that big game against Purdue, and obviously it showed today.
He's not adapted, has he? He's not adapted to people adapting to him.
Well, and the other thing is too, a simple pitch and catch attempt. Right to him, and he drops the ball. For what could have been a first down, it ends up being what was it, a third down situation after that? And Nebraska,
the fourth down drop last weekend. Think about that. They're driving to tie. And it was 4th and 8, and he dropped it.
So obviously something mental on his part right now. Tim Bob Kitzmiller joins us here, and then we'll get to Connor Clark here in a moment. Tim Bob, sitting in the friendly confines of your home and watching the game today, let's get your take on everything.
Boys, you can't polish a turd. It is what it is.
Can we quote you?
You absolutely can. You can. My brother said it many years ago. You can't polish a turd. It is what it is. We've seen this up front and personal for I don't know how many weeks now. No matter what they do in the first half, the second half they can't do diddly. And squad is as far as reach at this point. And I'm just telling you that Michigan's outscored their opponent 100-3. So going in at halftime was about as good as that game was going to get. I went to the game last week at Minnesota, stood there and watched them, play a pretty good first half, and then second half. I'll quote you again. Coach I played for, Charlie Cadre, used to say, son, I put you in the game, give you an opportunity to play, and what do? You pee down your leg. You wet yourself. can't step up and play when you got to. So those are my Oklahomans for tonight. And I'm just telling you, it ain't getting no better. Maybe they can pull out a win against Minnesota, against the Badgers or Iowa, but it is what it is.
I got a quick. Let's do a quick little survey here. How many of us have heard of booger sugar? Right, we've heard of booger sugar. I'm sitting next to Katie, my sweet gal Katie.
I love when he does this to me.
Yeah. It's my buddy Nate's lovely wife. Before we get rumors started, right? I can't. So the long and short of it is, she's like, I went to KU. She's a Jayhawk, and she's like, I never heard of cocaine referred to as booger sugar. Who believes that?
Come on.
I'm serious.
Andrew.
Right?
Other people have heard of this?
Yeah, raise your hands, fellas, if you heard of booger sugar.
She's lying to you, Schmitty.
I grew up with 6 brothers. 6. Never once did I hear the word booger. The term booger sugar.
Yeah.
She's lying.
Mokes, you need a drink. You okay, cowboy?
Things have gone off the rails.
Not booger sugar.
Before we
Meg's back.
Before we get back to Meg, let's get Connor Clark's assessment. Connor.
Well, I'm going to go off of what Will said. That, I mean, you saw how good Michigan's offensive line was, and there's a reason why they won the best offensive line in the country last year. Every single time that Michigan put the ball in their running back's hands, whether it was Corum or whoever else, it seemed like 8-9 yards a carry. And, we were come to expect that in this game, but just seeing that in action and realizing how good Michigan really is up front, it was kind of amazing to watch. It makes me that much more interested for their matchup against Ohio State in a couple of weeks, because that's how they won the game last year, was up front. So we'll see how that pans out. Nebraska put in a tough spot. Purdy looked a little bit better, as Chris said earlier. Logan might be a little bit hurt. Who knows? They're just very conservative. Obviously, the whole thing with Whipple on the sideline was one that was not expected to happen. So just an unfortunate circumstance there. But Michigan gets the late cover at home in a snowy, cold, and wet Ann Arbor. And Nebraska's just got to move on. 3-7, can't go to a bowl game once again. And I guess the carousel talks will increase yet again.
Meg, again, we got you back. Again, finish your thoughts on today's game from your viewpoint.
Sorry about that, you guys. I was up in my old bedroom, and apparently the internet doesn't like to work in the old middle child's bedroom, so I had to move down to my dad's office. But I don't know how much you heard when I first started on my little rant at the beginning of the show here, but we knew with Michigan's defense what we were expecting. We knew with Michigan's run game what we were expecting. They have one of the leading rushers in the entire country. Our defense hung. Can't really ask for much more than that. Unfortunately, same old song and dance with the offense. I guess we were just kind of hoping for a cover. That didn't end up happening. It is what it is. Is Dion here yet?
Oh, jeez.
There we go.
I'm on that bandwagon.
I thought the Deion Sanders rumor died like 24 hours ago.
We can keep it alive.
It died at 6 p.m. with his post game. Nebraska's never contacted me.
Supposedly.
I just want to put here too that Alabama and Ole Miss is officially gone final. Alabama won that 30-24.
Damn.
So get on the air.
Big finish by Bama on 4th down. I mean, Ole Miss had it inside the 13-yard line, and Bama found a way. So
are we now on the air on the radio now, Connor?
Well, let's head to a break first, and then we'll.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll stay.
All right, some of us are off to go to Dave Matthews. So
all right,
have a good time.
Love you, long time. Enjoy.
Eat some gummies.
Wow.
Eat some gummies and get in the mood for Dave Matthews. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Only a half a gummy. Only a half a gummy, man. Don't go all in.
It's so funny
from the top rope.
How it shifted.
Go with the mentality of Cheech and Chong when you walk in, my friend.
Well, no, we'll be okay that route. I mean, it's just funny how it shifted to with the smell of Marley to now you have women and men that you've seen these shows for years, because me and my buddy Jeff are going for 15. We've been to 15 of them, and we've all turned into old people that have cats and children, and it's gummies now, you know?
Cats.
The times have changed.
Cats and children.
Well, yeah, seriously, we went to the last show we went to in Des Moines.
Together like American Pie and Apple, apple pie and baseball, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Gummies and dirty hippies. I get it, right? We'll go. If she and Katie, who you got to get the booger sugar reveal with a little bit ago, she's scoffing at the fact that I'm hoping for an acoustic set.
Oh, jeez. On that note, we're gonna take a break. We'll come back with more of the Real Red Reaction Show by Currency in just a moment here on ESPN Lincoln, KFOR, and Kicks 96.9.
From malware-infected files during downloads. It will also detect malicious websites. To catch the Black Friday deal for a 1 or 2 year plan at NordVPN.com and to get 3 months for free.
Live free in 2023 with ESPN Lincoln. We're set to pay your rent or mortgage for an entire year.
You're kidding me.
To win and get details, just sign in daily at ESPNLincoln.com. You can register once per day, and the more times you register, the better your chances are to win. Live free for a year. Powered by Liberty First Credit Union and ESPN Lincoln.
Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Subscription required. Refund available for 60 days after purchase.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 90% cheaper?
Moats, you're the man.
Just go to 4hims.com/joy. At Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the biggest brands at 90% off. That's right. Get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but 90% cheaper. It's the same medication you get from your doctor, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. Results are guaranteed or your money back. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/joy. That's 4hims.com/joy for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/JOY.
What's the best product I bought this year? Oh, that's easy. Salonpas pain-relieving patches. The proven medicines in Salonpas patches reduce my pain and let me do the things I need to do every day.
In a recent clinical study, patients using Salonpas reported improved sleep, mood, and the ability to work. They had less pain and were able to reduce their use of oral pain medications.
For pain, I use Salonpas. It's good medicine.
He said me too.
ESPN Lincoln's Real Red Reaction Show, live with your calls, opinions, and rants, all uncensored. Get it all out there. Say what you need to say without limits. The Real Red Reaction Show, powered by Hail Varsity.
Say your say now at 402-466-3776 or tweet your thoughts at ESPN Lincoln.
Only from ESPN Lincoln, 101.5 FM and 1480 AM.
It is the Real Red Reaction Show here on ESPN Lincoln FM 101.5, 1480 AM. We're also streaming through StreamYard on the Facebook and Twitter accounts for ESPN Lincoln, KFOR, and Kicks 96.9. Welcome in, Jeff Moats, along with a cast of many tonight. Will Wilson, Connor Clark, Meg Reeder, Tim Bob Kitzmiller, Bill Hooks. You just missed out on Chris Schmidt, who's heading up to the Dave Matthews Band show tonight. So we will take your questions and comments. The number to call to get in is 402-466-3776. Or if you're outside the Lincoln metro area, 800-825-5865. And, of course, you can contact us through the social media apps that we're streaming tonight. We'll take your comments that way as well. Again, Nebraska falling at Michigan today, 34-3. One of the things that we were talking about before we went to break on the stream that we were going to get to here in the show was the fact that Chuba Purdy went out with an injury today. And not long after that is when there was a play where a Michigan player got knocked out of bounds and it clipped Nebraska offensive coordinator Mark Whipple and took him down. And Coach Whipple was then taken into the locker room. He did not come back out for the second half. So it sounds like with both, it may have been something knee related that has not officially been confirmed yet. Still waiting to get a word from University of Nebraska football officials on what may have been the case with those two injuries. But again, something that I found interesting because, there was people saying all week that, Logan Smothers should get the start. They ought to run the football more. Mark Whipple's a guy that is very much pass-oriented, not much run-oriented in the scheme of things with the offense. But I just found it interesting that both Purdy and Whipple went out, and the dynamic of the football game from there really changed. And so Mickey Joseph takes over as the OC, and Logan Smothers comes in to run the offense, and Nebraska just had too much difficulty trying to accomplish what they wanted to do on offense this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that, because you look on Twitter after Whipple went out, we all saw that Mickey Joseph was going to be calling plays. I'm not convinced that was the case because he didn't have a play sheet in his hand.
I heard that Whipple
He
went
did
up
at the
into
start of the half,
booth.
I thought.
I didn't see
Whipple. I thought Whipple went up in the booth.
Okay.
What I heard on the Husker radio thing, and they talked about it briefly. I was running to get Chinese food, so I was tuned in on the radio.
Are we going with shrimp broccoli tonight?
Orange chicken.
I went with Kung Pao shrimp is what I went with, and they
Oh,
little crab rangoon for an appetizer, so a little hot mustard to go with it. But anyway, I digress. They said that Smothers had been dinged up, that he didn't warm up early in the first time when they came out, but he did come out the second warm up. So I think Chris is right. Maybe Smothers is a little dinged up, but again, I said what I said earlier. It is what it is. Can't polish a turd. This offensive line was awful and can't run the football. And we've seen this thing for are we up to 7 games now, and the script doesn't change. So I will say this: I was listening a little bit to the Real Red Reaction show, or the Real Red Reaction. Sorry,
that's our show.
Chris Smitty show, yeah, the show while I was driving around over lunch hour, and they were talking about how Whipple calls plays. That he's kind of a box checker, and he doesn't necessarily stay with what's running until he's gone through his whole list of checks. And I thought that was an interesting take that I don't feel like the coaching staff is adapting to the players. They're very much set in their style, and it seems like as much as they don't want to, they're playing in silos. The defense and the offense are just not cohesive as a team, and that's just a 30,000-foot guy on the outside looking in at a football team going, this ain't good. So that's my take.
Well, isn't that Whipple, though? Isn't he notorious for being stubborn? I mean, so if that's your take on it, Tim Bob, I think that's pretty dang accurate because he's a very my way or the highway kind of guy. And to your point of not maybe adhering to the players so much as wanting to stick to his own, I'd say that's pretty accurate, pal.
I ain't as dumb as I look sometimes.
You look great, Tim Bob.
You look amazing.
No, you guys mentioned the O-line. I mean, Anthony Grant, this had to be his game, right? And what frustrates me the most is you look at these other Big Ten teams, they have backups that can come in. These backups on our team, they've had 3 weeks to have serious practice time with Casey out, and it doesn't even look like it's helping them. I mean, It was bad tonight.
Well, I want to go off that too, Will. I'm glad you brought that up because Elijah said this on the pregame show. This is the biggest roster in the Big Ten. There's 160 guys on this roster, and some of them aren't even getting reps in practice because they got to sit up in the stands because there's no room for them. So why do we have a roster that's large? And clearly you could see it on the field. Prime example, Michigan. Lots of backups that can come in and can give you very, very effective reps with the football. And that's something that Nebraska does not have right now. And it's something that they will not have probably for the rest of the season unless something totally flips on its head in the next 2 weeks, which is not really feasible at this point. So it's just concerning in that sense. And I wanted to echo what Elijah said earlier. It's the biggest roster in the Big Ten, yet some guys don't even get the chance to, line up and see these repetitions in the week leading up to these games. And clearly in the quarterback room, especially too, that's been hurting Mickey Joseph and company a lot the past 2.5 weeks or so.
Well, that brings up the question too. If you've got that many players on your roster, I mean, how many of those guys are your walk-ons?
Exactly.
And the thing is, the walk-on program, and I'm not trying to go old school here. I'm just, in years past, the walk-on program, they brought kids on that were probably, not good enough to where they could receive a scholarship, but still had the talents to where they could play at that level. And then they worked hard in practice and put in the blood and the sweat and everything else to get better at their position to where they can make, the 2-deep chart and maybe earn a scholarship. I mean, that's what it was all about, and it was mainly geared for a lot of these kids from across Nebraska, whereas at the same time, Nebraska was recruiting kids from Texas, California, Florida, I think even later on Ohio, and now you've got so many kids on a roster and they're not being able to practice, or they can't practice or even do any sort of drills or workouts. They're just sitting around. There's something wrong. And I guess you got to go back and look at the drawing board and say, well, all right, if we got this many kids, I mean, obviously we need to keep some of these kids fresh. And if we've got some hurt quarterbacks or hurt skill position players, we got to have some of these kids ready to go. I saw Jarrett Sinek that was out there during pregame, throwing the football around. And he was a great high school quarterback at Hastings. Tim Bob and I, we saw him play against Lincoln North Star 2 years in a row. And Sinek was just a tough competitor, just a great athlete. And he's one of those kids that gets a walk-on offer to join Nebraska. But, it's almost like now a lot of these kids like him that maybe have the skill set and haven't been given a shot, they're just going to be lost in the shuffle. So I guess that's the other thing. If you've got the biggest roster in the conference and something's not working to where you're winning ball games, it's almost like, okay, what do we need to do to limit the number of walk-ons, or do we need to reevaluate and look at who we're going to be putting in at the skill positions, or, what do we need to do to fix the problem? And I think the one thing that goes without saying is that you need a better depth at the line spots on both sides of the football. That's the one thing that's hurting Nebraska. There's not enough depth on both sides of the football and in the trenches. You got enough skill position players, but now you're getting down to the nitty gritty when it comes to the quarterback spot. You've got 3 guys now that are banged up, and you got Wisconsin next week, and then you go to Iowa Thanksgiving weekend. What do you got to do? I mean, you're running out of time. You want to try at least win your final 2 games of the season and not be it a total washout. I know you're not going to go to a bowl game, at least at this point, but what do you need to do? I mean, I guess that's the question that Mickey Joseph and the coaching staff and even the players to a point need to ask themselves.
Mochi, I appreciate what you just said there because first of all, I want to shout out Coach Whip. I hope he's safe. I hope he's healthy. Everything goes well for him and whatever happened there. But can we go a little positive for a minute? Let's shout out Coach Bill Bush. He's done a phenomenal job with the defense. Sorry, I apologize. The defense, because he was dealt a turd, as Timbo would say. He was dealt a turd, and he's done a phenomenal job. And if you go back to it, it's all about coaching. We don't develop anybody, and Coach Bush has taken a turd, and he's turned it okay right now. I think that defense has been good enough to win the last 3 weeks.
Even though they can't get off the line.
Hey, the defense is
they've been fine.
Bill, the defense has played 2 more games than the offense has in terms of time of possession, right?
Absolutely, they have.
Yeah, I mean they've been dealt.
Seriously, like you talk about a big roster, but we don't develop the roster. No. We don't have the coaches in the last 10 years that have developed a roster. But right now, Bill Busch is developing a turd right now.
If you looked at the coaching staff that we've had at Nebraska in the last 20-year cycle, this is post Frank Solich. I think the one that's been more embracive, in my opinion, of that, walk on and developing players to a degree has been Bo Pelini. And I might get egg thrown on my face about it, but that's my opinion. I think he was more of a traditionalist compared to some of the other coaches that have been at Nebraska during that amount of time. But I will say, Bill Busch, I think, has done a great job in stepping into that role as a defensive coordinator. And considering, did they give up 34 points today? Yeah, I think it was expected. Michigan's a juggernaut. They're one of the at least leading 4 teams that are finalists for the college football playoff right now. I think he's done a great job. And I think Mickey Joseph, considering that the hand that he was dealt, has done all he could and done what he can to try to keep this thing afloat. It looks like it's sinking, but I also think he's trying to get kids pumped up, believe in themselves, and believe that they can try to go out and win ball games. It's not an easy task. The Big Ten's a very tough conference, and you got to work with what you got. And I think, to Mickey's credit, I think he has worked his tail off and deserves a lot of credit in many areas. But we'll see what plays out here in the next couple of weeks.
Bill, I agree with you, too, with how Busch has kind of revamped the defense in a way. You give up 20 points to Minnesota, that should be good enough to win you a ball game. Obviously, the issue at quarterback is a big reason why they did not win that game. You look at this game, they held Michigan in check. The offense of Michigan didn't really look like a world beater, and a part of that, I think, is because of the defense. And you look at the running backs that Nebraska's had to face in the past 3 weeks straight. You go from Chase Brown to Mo Ibrahim, and then you have Blake Corum. And honestly, I think this week was probably the bottom of those 3. But I think the game plan surrounding on how to stop those running backs really hasn't been half bad, because at the end of the day, okay, guys like Chase Brown, Blake Corum, and Mo Ibrahim, they're going to get theirs eventually, right?
Yep.
But I think the front 7, despite the lack of push on the line, has done a decent job with keeping some of the bigger names and honestly some of the best backs in the country in check, very loosely in check, if that's what you want to call it. But especially if you go back to the Illinois game, Chase Brown had a little bit of difficulty getting going in that game. The same thing with Mo Ibrahim in that first half against Minnesota. So I would agree with you. I give a lot of credit to Bill Busch, and I think we need to put Tim Bob's saying about the turd on a T-shirt.
So Bill Busch for head coach.
Bill Busch for head coach. Is that what we're getting?
Hey, speaking of the defense, Dave, here's some tidbits from post game from the Nebraska football team. Freshman linebacker Ernest Hausman had 10 tackles. That sets a career high for him. The previous best that he had was 7 against Georgia Southern. He also had his first career sack for 3 yards in the third quarter. Edge rusher Garrett Nelson had an 8-yard sack in the first quarter, giving him a team-leading 5.5 sacks this season. And they're also a career high for Nelson, and he's had 12 career sacks. Just some defensive notes that stand out today more than anything. And also edge rusher O'Shawn Mathis made his first start today. So those are just some tidbits from postgame from the Nebraska football team. Number to call to get in is 402-466-3776, 402-466-3776, 800-825-5865. If you're calling outside the Lincoln area, Red Reaction Show presented by Currency, Jeff Moats and the crew. We got Tim Bob Kitzmiller, Will Wilson, Bill Hooks, Meg Reeder, Connor Clark will take your calls and comments. And, we're just looking at some of the comments coming in on.
Don't give anything to that Ryan Shear. He's just being a troll right now. I could care what he has to say.
Well,
and Mochi missed one stat. We have one receiver with a bag of peas somewhere.
A bag of peas.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, have we flown off the rails yet?
Yeah, we're way off the rails. I took us early off the rails.
And then of course My comment is Will said from off the top rope regarding where Schmitty's going tonight and what he should do beforehand.
I think we all want to eat some gummies and call it a night.
Yeah, Moats, you're the one who brought up gummies, so don't put that on me.
No, but you said that came off the top rope. I heard you say it.
It did. It was good content.
I mean, it was like Randy Macho Man Savage from
I will say this.
1988.
I will say this about tonight's game. You know, there's a lot of people out there who do want Mickey Joseph to be the head coach, but tonight didn't help his cause. I know it was tough circumstances today losing your OC, but I just think these last few weeks he hasn't been doing any favors for himself. I'll just say that.
Well, let me ask you this then. While we're on that subject, Will, let me ask you. If Nebraska, let's just say, sake of argument, let's say Nebraska next week against Wisconsin comes out, plays a hell of a football game, gets a win in the final home game of the regular season, then goes to Iowa, pulls off a close win there, let's just say.
Okay.
Is that something to consider when you're looking at Mickey? And there's somebody that commented on social media that, you know, the Urban Meyer talk. And I'm not buying that Urban Meyer talk at all.
No,
I'm not either.
But,
if he does beat Wisconsin and Iowa, that does help his case because those are two big wins, especially on the road against Iowa. But I believe that the university is having conversations with people who they're going to hire right now. I'm
sure they are.
You know, so I think it's past that point. Mickey could win these next two games, but I really don't think it's going to do much.
What about you
I
guys?
absolutely agree with Will. A little too late at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if wins in the next two games will really help Mickey. To be honest, going into this week, I don't think he was really in consideration, period, just for me personally. I think that 6 had to be the number in the win column for Mickey to have a shot at the job. And even then, and we talked about this on Hail Varsity a couple weeks ago as well. What is like the standard difference between Mickey, who's a guy who obviously played college football here, but has been here and now is the interim head coach, versus a guy who's outside of the program, just like throw a name out there, like a Dave Aranda or something? Because if I'm Trev Alberts, I don't want to hire an interim head coach that missed a bowl game just because he's a Husker. I get it. His recruiting aspect is awesome, and I hope they keep him around for that. But I think that they got to go outside. I think that his chances were kind of diminished, honestly, completely after the Minnesota loss.
But I also think
was the Mickey Joseph metrics the same as Scott Frost
to keep him around?
Yes. So he had to get the 3 wins. Scott had to get a 6.
I think both of them had to get sticks. I think they had to make a bowl game this year.
Yeah, and I agree with you to that degree. And when I talked to the executive club before the season started, I said, and I was on target, I think, right away with it after the 3rd game against Georgia Southern. It was blatantly obvious. And I told the executive club the same thing. The goal this year is to get 6 wins and to get to a bowl. And some of those guys thought, really? With all the talent that Nebraska's got this year coming in, all these transfers from the portal? And I said, the portal has been good and bad for Nebraska. I mean, you're bringing in all these great athletes from these different programs that, their philosophies are somewhat similar, but they're different. And the approach is different too. But the goal is 6 wins, 6 losses, and a bowl game. That seems reasonable. Well, it looked like that was going to be the case, but again, Minnesota happened. And that Minnesota game was extremely winnable, in my opinion, for Mickey Joseph. You had a lead. Things go south in the second half. Nothing's right. Casey Thompson not in there. And everything just falls apart. And that's what really hurt, because I still think if Nebraska would have won that game last week and then lost today, there's still hope for them to get to a bowl game this year. Because I still think even now that technically they're out of consideration unless somebody has a very much generous heart and has a bowl game that they'll bring in like a 5-17 to play somebody. But I still think, had Nebraska won that game last week, lost today, and again, Wisconsin, that's a winnable game, I still believe. And I still think to a point Iowa's a winnable game. So you had your chances, but I think now it's plain and simple. You just finished the year strong. You try to fix what you can. If the quarterback situation is going to go south from here, then I don't know what else is going to happen.
I also think this comment is really interesting, too. If he does win the next 2 games, what happens with Mickey? Does he go somewhere else? Is he brought back in a different role with NU? It's interesting.
I don't think 2 wins or not, I think he's already made a case to be hired by another school. I've said the past few days, if I'm Colorado who's looking for a head coach, I'm looking at him maybe. Definitely.
Would that include bringing his brother?
Yeah, and bringing his brother back, to get that reunion going.
Well, and Mickey did sign something that regardless of what happens this year, that he would be retained in the role that he was brought into at Nebraska. And I think it's like, 2-3 year deal, something like that. So it depends on where Mickey's heart's going to be after this season is over with. I mean, he's got to look at himself in the mirror and even talk it over with his family. Is it worth staying in Lincoln? Is there a possibility that I could help build up this program in a different capacity as an associate head coach or an assistant or whatever? Or would it be better for me to take on my own journey and go to a different program and try to rebuild it, like a Colorado? What was the other job that's opening up? Or Arizona State. And
Arizona State.
Yeah, and then Auburn just opened up. I'm not saying Mickey's going to go to Auburn, but I mean that's a high profile job. But again, Auburn's been on some hard times. They've been on a up and down battle. But Mickey's got to say to himself, what's more important? Is it important for me to finish what I got started here in Nebraska, or should I just scratched off? Let's start over with a clean slate and go someplace else.
Everybody, let's be honest. Who's knocking on the door? 2 crappy jobs. Colorado. Arizona State, crappy jobs. And who else is maybe better built to rebuild this program than Mickey Joseph? Where else is he going to go?
Well, I mean, Matt Rule, there's an argument for Matt Rule. I think there's an argument for Dave Aranda. Hell, I think there's an argument for Urban Meyer. I mean, you can make an argument for any of these guys.
I'm done with the Urban talk. I'll see.
I know most.
Here's the other thing.
Most, I'm with you, but there is an argument.
I'll see it when I believe it. I'm dismissing the whole Urban Meyer talk.
That's fine. That's fine.
You guys want to talk about jobs? Let's talk about jobs. Matt Rule is going to go to Auburn. Book it right now.
Oh, I think what's his name from Alabama?
That was
Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops just lost to Vanderbilt at Kentucky. K-State is right now playing Baylor right now. You can watch it. You can pick your choice, whatever. But this is not a quick fix. So what do you want to do with this program?
Hooks, I want to jump on that. This is not a quick fix. You got to have an identity. And as much as many people in Nebraska don't like Harbaugh, he built an identity. He knows what his players are. He's recruited to those players. He's built depth off of those players. He's going to line up and run the football. Same thing in Iowa, Wisconsin. There is a style of football in the Big Ten that Nebraska is going to have to adapt to. This is not the Big 12. This is not the ACC. This is the Big Ten. Cold weather. You got to be able to run the football on a day like today where it's cold, set up your play action pass, and run the damn ball, play defense, kick the ball, and have special teams. And that's a different brand of football than Nebraska wants. But if you want to win in the Big Ten, that's what you got to do. Go look at Illinois when they brought back – Lovie Smith didn't get it. They brought back Illinois. They brought back the pig farmer, and what's he doing? Running it down your throat, playing defense, and playing special teams. That's the brand of football Big Ten is. And if Nebraska wants to win in the Big Ten, they're going to have to coach to that.
Well, but Tim Bob, to add on to your thought.
Minnesota, Illinois, every big team but but Nebraska knows who they are.
And maybe Ohio State can get away with it, but they still run the football. They have good running backs and a solid offensive line. That's my point. You got to find a coach who knows how to coach and win in the Big Ten. It's a different animal. And
I want to add on to that. You look at these coaching prospects that Nebraska has been rumored to be looking at. Dave Aranda, a Big 12 coach. Has he ever coached in the Big Ten? To my knowledge, I don't know. Not even an assistant coach. He was
the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin.
Okay.
At Wisconsin. Okay. So that's the reason Aranda kind of is a dark horse, because he was the defensive coordinator there, and he was very good. But again, you're looking at hiring a coach who's middle of the pack in the Big 12, right? But you look at the bottom of the pack in the Big 12. The Iowa State coach is bottom of the heap. You got to find somebody who knows how to coach in the Big Ten, who understands the culture and how you have to run the football, and when it's cold and it's snowy. And listen, I grew up a Big 12 fan. I grew up a Big 8 fan. Look, I grew up in Oklahoma, Nebraska, but those days are gone. You got to figure out when you're at and what you're doing, and coach to it and recruit to it and build a program to it. It took Harbaugh 7 years, right? Right? Yep. He was on the hot seat, but he knew what he was doing. He knew where he was going. He's brash, and he's opinionated, and he's tough as a $2 steak is how they were describing. But he knows how to win in the Big Ten, right?
But to add on to your thought, Tim Bob, that's the key. Have any of these coaches that are in the coaching carousel that Nebraska's looking at have that experience? I mean, they probably have as an assistant at one school. You mentioned Dave Aranda at Wisconsin, but in general, that experience of realizing, okay, you're going to go from a conference that's primarily become a pass-oriented with a mix of run-style offense versus going into a conference like the Big Ten, which is predominantly very much run-oriented football, especially when you get into this time of the year where the climate's going to be extremely cold and it's going to be very tough throwing the football at times. You can't just sling it all over the yard every single play. I think I say
UCLA and USC are going to get a rude awakening the first time they bring that West Coast offense into Lansing, Michigan, or Ann Arbor on a cold day like the gate, get punched in the throat, get punched in the mouth, and get run all over. It's a different brand of football.
I'm going to jump in here real quick because I want to go back to something Bill and Tim Bob said. And before I go into this argument, yes, you need the right guy. But the argument, or really, for lack of a better term, the excuse of it's not a quick fix, I don't think can be used very much anymore. Because when you look at the landscape of college football, you have NIL and the transfer portal, which are out of control, obviously. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at TCU. Look at Illinois. Look at those programs. Look at how quickly those turned around. Look at how quickly that happened. If Nebraska gets the right guy, I don't think the argument that, well, he needs his guys here can fly. The 4-year rule, I don't think that can fly. There's no such thing as a slow fix in college football, I don't think, anymore, because the way things are going. So the fact of the matter is, this has to be, it doesn't have to be quick, but if it's slow, something clearly is not working and it needs to be fixed.
Connor, I totally agree with what you just said. Here's been the problem in Nebraska. For me, in my opinion, assistant coach development of players, because everybody has stepped in there. They've had talent when they got there. When Bielema got there, Lovie Smith had players. TCU, Gary Patterson had players. Sonny Dykes brought in assistants that could coach. Brett Bielema, assistant that can coach. Nebraska has sucked at that for years.
Hey, I don't disagree. And again, TCU, you think about a year ago, that coach got fired, right? Gary Patterson, now he's the defense coordinator at Texas. He didn't get stupid overnight, right? So I don't disagree with you, Connor. I look at what Josh Heupel did at Tennessee, and that's a quick turnaround. But, I say it's a little different animal in the Big Ten.
Well,
and I would agree that Lovie had talent on that defensive line, on that offensive line.
Well,
that he could build.
It could be harder in the SEC, to be honest. It will.
Oh yeah.
You know what though? Some schools a slow fix can happen, but here in Nebraska, it's like impossible to happen because of the fan base that we have. I mean, if you're not making a bowl game in 2 years, right? I mean, these fans are ready to find a new coach. Like, you know how it is here in Lincoln, guys.
Well, Nebraska's been in a slow fix since 2016.
Right.
That's the matter of the issue here. And I get a lot has changed since then, but a slow fix that can't be a reason why anymore, in my opinion. It just can't. Because you have the resources, you have the landscape of college football going that way. You're a huge brand, and you have Mickey Joseph, who hopefully stays within the program, who's a great recruiter and can get guys to come play for you. And
you got to keep the guys. Look how many guys came through you talk about the portal. Nebraska's probably sent more players to the portal to other teams than anybody in the conference. I mean, Nebraska's sent how many players that were 4-star recruits and good. I mean, you talk about the Hastings kid. The kid out of Kearney Catholic was a better quarterback in terms of throwing the football. Where's he gone? He's disappeared.
And he's a scholarship player.
Right. Wilson's a better quarterback out of East High from the is.
Thank you, Hooks. I can play quarterback.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the quarterback at East High is much better. I'd grow with that too.
Noah Walters, you're referring to, who's at North Alabama.
No, I said Will Wilson.
No, he said Will Wilson, Mo. It's not Walters.
Were you third or fourth string for Coach Gingery?
I was fifth bass drum of the marching band, if that helps.
It is the Real Red Reaction Show here on ESPN Lincoln FM 101.5, 1480 AM, and at ESPNLincoln.com. We're also streaming on StreamYard at ESPN Lincoln's Facebook and Twitter pages. Same thing for KFOR and for Kicks 96.9. Number to get in to call and sound off on your thoughts of the Nebraska-Michigan game is 402-466-3776 or 800-825-5865. So we've been talking about the coaching situation, the NIL. I guess now let's look ahead to Wisconsin. Obviously there's a lot of things that have to be done to be fixed before next Saturday, but what else needs to happen for this football team? It's the final home game of the season, and you want to wrap up with, a victory at home, right? Everybody does. But what else needs to be accomplished?
You need Trev to announce a head coach.
You need Trev to announce a head coach? And during the Iowa week or when?
No, I just need to happen now.
Right now?
Well, because here's the deal. He's got a tough challenge. How do you keep these kids motivated to go play Wisconsin, to play Iowa? Like, the fans need something. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to that game. There's going to be pockets in the stadium. It's going to be sad. It really is. So what sparks his program going forward?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is this is probably the worst Wisconsin has looked in 11 years when you haven't been able to. So I guess there's a silver lining. But I think you need Casey Thompson to really feel good about having a chance of winning that game.
We're not winning with these backups.
Nope.
And Purdy, you hate to speculate, but Purdy looked like, that was kind of an awkward fall. You hope it's not too serious, but I agree. Casey Thompson's got to come off the injured reserve and lead them and be able at least to be able to run some consistent offense. And, you got to have some offensive consistency. You got to be able to run the ball. Otherwise, it's going to be the same old song and dance, man. I mean, it's an Aerosmith song, right? Same old song and dance. You watch it, they're just going to run the ball, second half, own the clock, and Nebraska's defense is going to get worn down, and you're going to be down by 2 scores, and you're going to go, oh, we were close. And I told you when I started the show, need to put it on a shirt. Can't polish a turd. It is what it is.
And Bob is on fire.
Tim Bob, it says it's like this. If it smells like poop, tastes like poop, what is it?
Probably poop.
Bam.
I think I'm about to throw up hearing all this, but it's hard for me to think what coach we should hire there's not too many home run hires out there right now. And
Will Wilson, Jeff Blair, Bill Hooks, Jeff Moats, Tim Bob, Schmitty on gummies. Pick one.
Well, look at Tim Bob is a pretty good Oklahoma high school record.
I will tell you, I did coach an undefeated 5th and 6th grade season. I will admit to that.
Hey, by the way, Tim Bob, you're better than Jeff Saturday right now.
I'm telling you what my college coach told me. Any man who will put his livelihood and the future of his family's success in the hands of 18 to 20-year-old kids is a fool bound for disappointment. I do not envy any of these coaches. The things they got to do with today at NHL and all this money to it, hell no.
Tim Bob, I do that every morning on the morning hookup with Will Wilson.
Hey, really quick, one thing that we have not mentioned in this show. How about the hit and the flip to Alante after he made that catch?
Oh, he's got peas on his, you know what?
Oh, yeah. I'm with you, Moats. That was an interesting thing. But what about the fumble in the end zone? All of us here in this house thought that ball hit the sideline.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and they never did get a good shot or the good angle when they were showing it on replay, because I don't think they had a camera in that part of the end zone to where they could zoom in and show it.
Well, I think all they did was go to the regular broadcast angle. I think that was the best look at it. Because, Moats, you mentioned it after the play happened. They were showing replays on the TV, and they were all from the opposite side of the field, so you couldn't really see the ball behind the pile of players. So I think the broadcast angle was probably the best look you were going to have, because in real time, I kind of stopped. I was like, wait a minute, did the nose of the football hit out of bounds? Obviously, either A, not a good enough angle, or B, it just wasn't conclusive enough. But, yeah, that was an interesting play for sure.
Definitely.
Well, just a lot of interesting things happening today in the game, and we'll try to continue our analysis here. Again, Real Red Reaction Show. If you got some comments, want to sound off, number to call 402-466-3776, 800-825-5865. You can also get a hold of us on any of our social media accounts through ESPN Lincoln, KFOR, Kicks 96.9 to share your thoughts about the game. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more of the Real Red Reaction Show after this on ESPN Lincoln.
May I have your attention, please? I am so
boys, my blood sugar's low.
The Lincoln Wedding and Celebrations Show is back January 8th at the Embassy Suites downtown. Admission is free when you register online by January 6th. Visit with vendors including sweet and spicy creations and enjoy a style show featuring Ellen Bridal, complete weddings and events, and Studio SPS.
The Lincoln Wedding and Celebration Show Sunday, January 8th. Get your free tickets now at espnlincoln.com. The Lancaster County Engineering Department is hosting a walk-in hiring event. The Lancaster County Engineering Department is filling these vacancies: senior equipment operators, laborers, and mechanic supervisor. Necessary requirements include a high school diploma, driver's license, and a Class A CDL, or the ability to obtain one within 60 days of hiring. The walk-in hiring event is Thursday, November 17th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Lancaster County Engineering Department at 444 Cherry Creek Road.
You can't get much for $5 these days, unless you go to Wendy's for a $5 Biggie Bag. Get your choice of double stack, junior bacon cheeseburger, or crispy chicken BLT, plus 4-piece nugs, fries, and a drink, all for just $5. You got that bag. You got that Biggie Bag. You got that bag. That was smooth, wasn't it? That's how you're going to feel when you get that Biggie Bag at Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Includes 4-piece nuggets, small soft drink, and small fry. Prices
I'm Cameron
may be higher
Hall.
in
Doesn't
Alaska
your
and Hawaii.
family deserve the best? Eggland's Best Eggs. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Give you and your family more delicious farm-fresh taste, plus superior nutrition. Compared to ordinary eggs, Eggland's Best provides 6 times more vitamin D, 10 times more vitamin E, and 25% less saturated fat. These are no ordinary times, so why choose an ordinary egg? Only Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
There's never any FOMO with the iHeartRadio app. You won't ever have to miss out on your favorite shows and contests with this radio station again. Radio 24/7, 365. We're here when you want us. Stay connected and listen anywhere when you download the free iHeartRadio app.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone. I went through it a while back. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The patented key ingredient is something called Testofen, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. At work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text TIP to 321-321 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text TIP to 321-321. That's TIP to 321-321.
Products and statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or illness.
Real Red Reaction following every Husker game. Powered by Hail Varsity on ESPN Lincoln, 101.5 FM and 1480 AM.
It is the Real Red Reaction Show presented by Currency here on ESPN Lincoln, FM 101.5, 1480 AM. Also on our social media apps for Facebook and Twitter for ESPN Lincoln, Kicks 96.9 and KFOR. Jeff Moats, Will Wilson, Connor Clark. Looks like we've lost Hooksy for the moment. And Tim Bob Kitzmiller had to bail out. Meg Reeders had some internet issues, so she has not been able to reconnect with the show tonight. And really quick in the next few minutes, if you want to get a comment in here really quick, number to call is 402-466-3776, 800-825-5865. We'll take this up to the top of the hour and call it good. Otherwise, again, Nebraska falling today to Michigan 34-3. So Michigan does cover the spread today. They were a 31-point favorite, and they were able to accomplish that considering that the weather conditions in Ann Arbor today were very miserable. If you're not a cold weather guy like myself, even though I've lived here all my life and should be used to it by now, but still not. But, you know, just kind of a dreary day in Ann Arbor, just kind of tough to adapt to the weather conditions. And you begin to wonder if that maybe played a factor with some of the guys today for Nebraska.
I think it did, Moats, because you think about where Purdy came from. I think that might have been his first game in snow or cold weather ever.
Right. Well, look at O'Shawn Mathis. What about, Trey Palmer? I mean, these are guys that came from southern climates. They're not used to the cold weather, especially in Michigan at this time of the year. You think it's cold in Nebraska. It's really cold in Michigan.
I don't even want to know. But I don't think we can blame it on that. I think this team is just, the gap between Michigan and Nebraska, it's really big. And I'm not going to go and say we're a bad team, but we're definitely not a good team. We got a long ways to go.
Michigan's just a really good team. You pair that with the struggles and transition period of Nebraska to what Michigan is. I mean, they're hoping to defend their Big Ten title and get back to the college football playoff and try and avenge themselves in that sense as well. So, again, I mentioned it before, right before we got on the actual air, but when we were doing the stream, about how just dominant Michigan's offensive line is. It was really amazing to watch, and it is crazy how just physical and they just bully you up front. And again, I said this earlier, that makes me that much more intrigued for their matchup against Ohio State in a couple of weeks. That's how they beat them last year. This game is in Columbus, obviously, this year, so we'll see how that works out. Ohio State had a get-back game today against Indiana. I believe they put up 56 points on the Hoosiers as well after a struggle show against the Cats last week. But that really makes me interested for that weekend of Thanksgiving, the game between Michigan and Ohio State.
And that's a game that we're going to have live on ESPN Lincoln on the 26th. So 2 weeks from today, we'll have that big matchup with Michigan and Ohio State, which will ultimately determine, I think, the Big Ten East Division and perhaps could put Michigan in that spot to where they could maybe repeat as Big Ten champion. And by the way, for the record, the only Buckeyes I like are the chocolate and peanut butter candy or snacks. Those are to die for. Those are the only Buckeyes I like. Oh, Will, you're missing out, man.
You bring them to work someday, I'll try them. All right.
Well, We have a listener on KFOR that brings them in on a regular basis. So if I get some more of those, I'll let you know. Really quick, next week, Wisconsin. Quick thoughts on that, guys, really quick.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin, they haven't looked great this year. They fired their coach. If anything, I think it's going to be a really good game. I think the spread could be like 3.5 or something like that. But, if we win it, so what? We're not going to make a bowl. 5 wins aren't going to get you a bowl game. I think it's a game we could win, but I don't think it does much for us. I don't think it does much for Mickey. I don't think it does much for Nebraska. A win's a win. And I think if we win, Lincoln's going to be fun next week.
Connor?
I agree. I think if they do win, that Lincoln will be fun next week. It all depends on the health of Casey Thompson. If he's in, I'll be pretty intrigued because that could be a very winnable, not very winnable game, but a winnable game for Nebraska against Wisconsin for the first time in a while. Wisconsin didn't look that great today, struggled offensively against Iowa, who has a very good defense, but 2 teams in the head coaching search going head-to-head next week. Should be an interesting matchup at Memorial Stadium.
I think if you get a win next week, if you're Nebraska and you get a win next week, that's a big boost in your confidence. That may help you out to go over to Iowa City the following Friday and try to round out the regular season, pulling off a win there. And then you wait and see, okay, well, who we're going to have left over for next year. Who's going to be leaving? Who's going to be staying? The coaching situation, obviously, but you want to finish on a strong, positive note any way you can. So it'll be fun to watch. Again, the Real Red Reaction Show will be on next week, presented by Currency. We'll have it right after the Wisconsin game. Thanks to everybody that joined up today, from Meg Reeder to Tim Bob Kitzmiller, Bill Hooks. Is he standing upright okay still, Will? Is he still up and going?
Yes, he is. He looks great. He looks 10 out of 10.
To Chris Schmidt, to Connor Clark, and everybody else, thank you so much for joining us here on the Real Red Reaction Show presented by Currency. Until next time, I'm Jeff Moats. Thanks for listening, and we'll get you back into ESPN regular programming, and you're listening to KLMS Lincoln. It is 7:02.
Ew. Stuck in a cycle of rewashing your clothes?